Hey there, my name is Liz Wright, and I am a professor of psychology at Northwest Vista College in San Antonio, Texas, and this is Miss Lily. And I had a student who brought up an interesting question today in my child psychology class. We were talking about the different theorists. So it's the beginning of the semester, we're talking about different theorists and their ideas regarding child psychology and child development. And the student brought up the question of, or brought up timeout, and the question of how does timeout work. Speaking of, these animals need a timeout. What are y'all doing? Come on, quit. So first thing that we have to understand is the basis of operant conditioning. So operant conditioning basically works with reinforcements and punishments. And so we can, the goal of reinforcement is to increase a behavior. So if I'm trying to train my dog, Lily, to go in her crate, then I would say very nicely, crate please, and then when she went in her crate, I would give her a treat, right? So that would be a positive reinforcement because I want to increase her behavior going in her crate, and I'm giving her what she wants or something that she wants in order to get her to do that. So reinforcement, as I said, intends to increase a behavior, whereas punishment intends to decrease a behavior. And the words there are really important because intention is what is really important here. So if I intend to increase a behavior by doing something that a person doesn't want or doesn't like, then it's not going to increase their behavior. Whereas if I intend to decrease a behavior by doing something to somebody and they don't care about it, then it's not going to influence their behavior either. So the intention from me and the outcome of the person, the child, the animal, whoever's behavior we're trying to shape is going to be different based upon, our different perceptions of what's going on with this event, right? Okay, so with a positive anything, we think of it as adding something. So positive meaning plus, right? So giving something that someone wants in order to increase the behavior would be giving plus, and we are reinforcing the behavior. So that's a positive reinforcement. Whereas if we take something away that the person does not like in order to increase the behavior, that would be a negative reinforcement. So positive gives, negative takes away. So a lot of students say, well, what is that? What's an example of that? So if I told you, if you increase your studying behavior to get a good grade on exam 1, I will tell you that you don't have to do your least favorite chore anymore. All right. So when I teach face-to-face classes, a lot of times I ask students, okay, Kendra, what's your least favorite chore around the house? And Kendra will say, doing dishes. And I say, okay, so if you increase your studying behavior, which is what I want, so that's I'm going to give you a reinforcement in order to increase that behavior. Or I should say this, I'm going to take away the need for you to do dishes if you increase your studying behavior. So that would be a negative reinforcement, taking away something the person does not like in order to increase a behavior that we want. Then we could talk about punishment. Punishment intends, again, my intention with it, right, is to decrease a behavior. So a positive punishment gives the person or animal something they don't want in order to decrease a behavior. So it could be something such as, this is debatable, but giving a child a spanking, or giving a animal a shock to decrease a behavior that we don't want. While you may perceive that neither of those are ethical, those would both be examples of positive, giving something they don't want, punishment intended to decrease a behavior. And then we can talk about negative punishment, which is where we take away something that the person wants in order to decrease behavior that we don't want. And a lot of us have experience with this when we were growing up. So parents would say, I need you to decrease the negative behaviors towards your brother, or I will take away your cell phone. I will take away your TV time, whatever it is that the child actually enjoys. And again, this brings up that point of it has to actually matter to the person whose behavior or the animal whose behavior we're trying to shape. And so, if we're talking about shaping Lily's behavior, if Lily doesn't like the treats that I'm trying to give her, then it's not going to matter, right? If my dog wants to be alone in the crate and I take them out of the situation and put them in their crate, we might think of that as a punishment when in fact they want to be in their crate by themselves. So again, as we're using operant conditioning, we really want to think about, what is our motivation, but also how does the actual, the person or animal who's receiving this, how do they perceive it? Okay, so this brings us to timeout. Like, how does that work? So we see that our child is playing with another child, and they start playing aggressively with the other child. So they are throwing blocks at the other child. And so we remove them from the situation and we have them go sit in a chair by themselves in a corner for 5 minutes. And some people would call that a timeout. So a couple things to think about. My motivation here is to remove him from a social interaction, which we would think he would want to do, right? So that would be taking away something that he likes, the social interaction, in order to decrease the aggressive behavior. So that would be a negative punishment. But let's say that our child doesn't want to play with other kids and actually wants to be alone, but in this situation they've been told that it's playtime and you're supposed to play with other kids. And so in order to get away from the other kids, they do something aggressively, then that actually removing them from that situation would actually reinforce the behavior of hitting. So the child learns, okay, when I don't want to be in this situation, when I don't want to be social, but I'm told I have to be social right now. If I do something not so hot, that mom thinks is not so hot, the teacher thinks is not so hot, they'll remove me from the situation and I can get out of it. So the question becomes, what is the child's motivation for doing what they're doing, and are they enjoying the situation that they're in? Because if they're enjoying it and we remove them from it in order to decrease a behavior that they're exhibiting, then that would be a negative punishment. We're taking away something that they like, the interaction, in order to decrease the aggressive behavior. But like I said, not all children are going to be interested or want or be motivated by this social interaction. And so we really, as we're applying operant conditioning, we really want to be considering from the perspective of the person or the animal whose behavior we're trying to shape. Is this something that they enjoy? And if so, then it would be considered, to take them out of that situation because they're misbehaving or they're not following the rules would be considered a punishment. Whereas if they don't want to be there anyway, then it would be considered a reinforcer. This brings up really good questions about alternative school. So if we have a student in a high school that doesn't want to be there in the first place, they don't like the people that are around them, they don't like how their teachers are treating them, they don't like the vibe of the school, then they may act out in a way that gets them removed from the school and put into alternative school, or into detention, and they may feel more comfortable with the quiet of detention and being able to work on their own as opposed to having to work in groups with other students around. So we really want to think about, what's the person, the animal's motivation for doing the behavior, and how do we work with them to change it. And another question was, so if we are using timeout, then one of the really important parts of that is to sit down and have what I think of as like a debriefing of, okay, why are we doing this? Why were you removed from the social situation? And if you enjoyed the social situation, you didn't like the timeout of being removed from the social situation, what behaviors put you there? And what can we do differently next time so that we don't get removed from the social situation? And sometimes children will say, well, I threw a block at the other child. Or they'll, demonstrate that to you somehow to explain or to show that they understood that the reason why they got removed from the social situation is because of that. And so we want to work with them and say, okay, I get that sharing can be frustrating. Turn taking can be frustrating. So how can we work together, or how can we think about this differently, or how can we verbalize turn taking differently so that the acting out behavior doesn't occur again. So the important part after doing a timeout is to sit down and have that conversation and go, okay, so this is why it occurred. This is why the timeout was, why the timeout happened. So what was the problem, and how can we work on it differently next time so that we don't get involved with the whole timeout situation? Got yet another animal up there. So I hope that explains. I hope that answers the question. I hope that gives you some better ideas of how operant conditioning works and what some examples might be. I will tell you that in terms of applying the vocabulary of operant conditioning, many times we understand inherently what it means. So, but then applying the terms of reinforcement, punishment, positive, negative, putting those together into the 4 different types can be confusing for people. And I will tell you, as when I was a student, I graduated with my bachelor's, and I still didn't fully, it still didn't fully click. I had an idea of how it worked, but applying the vocabulary still didn't really click. And it wasn't until I was a teaching assistant and I was teaching it, and I had literally written down an example so that I could go by that example and not screw it up while I was teaching it. And so I was putting it on the board and showing it to people and how it worked. And it literally clicked in my brain as I was teaching it to these students. And so sometimes it takes us longer, sometimes it takes more practice, sometimes it takes the opportunity to teach it to other people before we can better understand it. Okay, thanks.